Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest Future Made Clear live Q&A session. I'm Tim Sykes, Brand Director at Packaging Europe, and have the pleasure of hosting this broadcast. Today's episode explores pathways to net zero in glass packaging, and we'll be reflecting on PEV's new and comprehensive decarbonisation report, which is launching this afternoon. From my standpoint, as someone covering the whole packaging industry, this is a really timely and important topic for glass to address. If we consider the market's pressures across the whole of packaging, developments in packaging materials such as plastics and paper are driven above all by a brand and consumer focus on packaging waste. On the other hand, container glass is already widely recycled and reused, with recycling rates around 80% in Europe. And its central challenge in terms of environmental credentials is clearly the carbon footprint associated with manufacturing inputs and also the weight in transit. I'd also observe that there's a broad expectation, which I personally share, that CO2 will eventually become the focus and the key metric for environmental performance of all packaging and packaged goods. As the climate crisis grows more central in public's environmental consciousness, FMCG can expect more rigorous accountability on its carbon goals and its roadmaps. And this is underpinned, of course, by the regulatory backdrop, which is going to be putting more and more emphasis on decarbonisation. EU countries are legally mandated to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030, which is basically tomorrow, isn't it? And also aim to be carbon neutral by 2050. Decarbonisation also featured as one of the central tenets of Mario Draghi's strategic report into the future of European competitiveness that was released last month in September. So how is the glass industry tackling this challenge? To learn more, both about what the industry is doing and about the challenges that it faces to move forward, I'm pleased today to share a platform with 4 industry experts. So let's introduce our guest speakers today. First of all, we have Fabrice Rivet, who has been Technical Director at pave, the European Container Glass Federation, since 2009. He has 24 years of experience in environmental sciences, industry, and European affairs. And Fabrice is an authority on the container glass industry's upcoming challenges and opportunities. Secondly, I'd like to introduce Romain Barral. He joined Veralia Group as operations director in 2020, and he oversees the company's technical R&D, environment, health and safety, quality, industrial excellence, supply chain, and purchasing departments. Patrick Kraft has worked at Gerresheimer since 2021, first as technical sustainability manager and currently as manager for new business development and sustainability at Gerresheimer Molded Glass. And last but not least, Sonia Pump serves as OI Glass's sustainability director, where she brings her passion for improving the planet to OI's 68 plants across 19 countries by working to develop a more sustainable glass manufacturing process. Welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining me today. So before we begin, just a quick housekeeping note. We would like to invite you, our audience, to share your questions and comments in the chat. We'd like this to be as interactive as possible. And at the end of this session, we'll be taking some time to share some of those questions with our speakers. Don't be shy. So let's get started. Fabrice, I'd like to start with you. And I mentioned at the beginning that pave is launching a new report this afternoon. I think it's just gone live into decarbonisation in container glass. Can I ask you to start off by giving us an overview of the context and purpose of the report and its key findings?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Tim, for the nice introduction, and welcome to all of you to this webinar. So I have something like 5 minutes to present to you the skeleton of the report, and then the other speakers will put some flesh on the skeleton by describing some concrete project. You have mentioned it, Tim, in your introduction. We know that a dramatic change is required to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, not only the container glass industry, but the whole society. But for us, it's a real challenge, and that's why our companies are really putting their weight behind a wide range of initiatives, projects to reduce glass carbon footprint, and that's what we wanted to show with this report. So the report showcases what our industry is putting in place to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and for us, it's mainly CO2. And if you browse through the report, you will see that we are describing 90 projects which are currently ongoing, being pilots or being commercial plans even. So we are quite advanced already. And what we also wanted to do in this report is to explain what we call the enabling conditions. So what authorities need to put in place, not only authorities, also maybe our customers, but what we need to ensure our transition towards a low carbon economy. And also this report has been co-signed by all CEO from the pave membership, so it shows how important it is for our industry. This is really the key challenge for us today. So next slide, please. When we speak about greenhouse gas, and I said it's mainly CO2 emission in our industry, but these CO2 emissions are coming from two different sources. The first one is the combustion of natural gas in our furnaces. And as you see on this slide, it represents something like 80% of our CO2 emissions. But we have also 20% of CO2 coming from the decomposition of the raw materials that we put in our furnace. So we are putting carbonates in our furnace, and under heat, they will decompose and give rise to oxide and emit CO2. And that represents, as I said, 20%. So the lion's share is the combustion of natural gas, but we should not forget about the remaining 20% that we need to address as well. Next slide, please. So the report has categorized all projects under 4 different pillars. The first one is called Furnaces of the Future, and it's mainly a transition from fossil fuel that we are using in our furnace today to low carbon energy sources. So, and that's the most important one because it represents 80% of our emissions, or direct emissions at least. The second pillar is also important because it addresses the remaining 20%. So by increasing the amount of recycled glass that you put in the furnace, you will reduce the CO2 emissions for 2 reasons. First, you don't need as much energy to melt glass than to produce glass from virgin raw materials. So if you need less energy, your emissions, your CO2 emission will be lower. But also, melted glass or recycled glass doesn't contain those carbonates, those virgin raw materials that we are putting on our furnace. And that means that you don't have those process emissions. So it's important also that we try to increase the collection of recycled glass and that we put more glass in our furnaces. I will give you a few figures later. Then we have a third pillar regarding sourcing and design. Here it's vast, it's a vast topic, but you will find a few examples in the report. For instance, explore the use of alternative raw materials not containing carbonates, or trying to lightweight or right-weight the bottle, as we say. So that's another source to reduce CO2 emissions. And then you have all the pillar regarding transport and delivery, because we are not forgetting that we have scope 2, scope 3 emissions, and we need to address transport. So that means that we need to move to alternative modes of transport like ships, trains, or we have to electrify trucks. That's also a possibility. Next slide. If you go on the website, you will see some maps where you can see where all those different projects are located. Here you see a map explaining where the projects addressing furnaces are located. So it's just the pillar number 1, furnaces of the future. And you see that there are different technologies that we are pioneering sometimes, like full electric furnace, or hybrid furnaces. Hybrid furnaces, we will come back on that, it's where you have a lot of electricity, but still a little bit of combustion. Then you have everything linked with biofuels, biogas. Hydrogen is very important, even if we don't have hydrogen today in Europe, available hydrogen, but it's something that we are also testing. So you see that there are some pilots across Europe regarding hydrogen. And of course, we don't forget the energy efficiency upgrades that we are doing since decades, but there is still possibility to improve. So this gives you a flavor, and the other speakers will come back on some of those projects. Next slide, please. So the container glass industry is a committed partner for sustainable packaging. Already today, we collect for recycling 80% of what we put on the market. So that's huge, but that's not enough. We would like to drive that up to, we would like to close the loop. We need to go to 90 and even higher. So that's very important. And you see that 92% of those 80% is recycled in a closed loop. It means that a bottle will become a new bottle. It will not be downcycled. And today we invest more than 600 million euro per year in the refurbishment of our furnaces, but this figure will very likely increase a lot because we will have to renew all the furnace, new technologies, etc. So that this figure will increase. Next slide, please. These are the enabling conditions. So that's very important because we cannot do it alone. We need the support from authorities, and it will come back during the discussion today, I think. But first of all, we need enough low carbon energy. That's key. There's not enough green electricity today. There's no green hydrogen. And we need this energy, this low carbon energy, to be affordable. And if we move to the next slide, you will see, you mentioned, Tim, the Draghi report in your introduction, which was published in September this year. You see here, this is a key graph in the Draghi report. You see the gap between Europe and China and the US regarding industrial retail power price and industrial gas prices. So for industrial retail power price, China and US are around 80 euro per megawatt hour, while Europe it's 170 something. So we have a huge gap, and so we cannot be competitive with such differences. So next slide, coming back to the enabling conditions. That's key. We need enough low carbon energy at an affordable price. That's really key. We also need authorities to deploy the necessary infrastructure for the transport and distribution of low carbon energy carriers. This is a bottleneck today for electricity, for sure. And for hydrogen, there is nothing. So we need absolutely this infrastructure. We need to improve glass collection infrastructure, and that's also in partnership with the authorities that we can do that. We need more support for glass makers for this transition. We will face increased capital and operational expenditure. So that needs to be addressed. The financing is not enough today. So national financing, European financing is needed to support us to transition. And then something also important, we need to consider the investment cycles of our industry. A furnace is operated during 15 years, 24 hours, 7 days. You cannot stop it. It needs to be run, and you cannot invest at any time. You need to wait until the furnace reaches its end of life, and then you can put in place new measure. You can build a new furnace, but in the meantime, it's extremely difficult. So that needs also to be taken into account. These are the most important enabling conditions. There are others, but I will stop here. And Tim, back to you.
Thank you very much, Fabrice. So let's unpack some of the issues that you've highlighted with our other speakers. And I'd like to start with Roman. So Roman, Fabrice has just described the transition to low carbon energy as the number one priority for glass. What type of low carbon energy sources is the industry exploring to replace fossil fuels? And what are the challenges that you see in terms of implementation at scale?
Thank you, Tim. Good afternoon, everyone. So, in fact, as Fabrice explained, the biggest portion of our CO2 emission are linked with the fossil fuels that we are using mainly to melt glass or raw material and recycle glass into glass. And in fact, we are, so this is the situation today, but it's also a big opportunity because, in fact, we are able to electrify this process. And this is giving us the ability, providing that we have access to low carbon electricity, to reduce drastically our CO2 emission. For this, as Fabrice explained, we have two main technologies and two levels of electrification of our furnaces. So maybe first point is to start with the current situation. Classically in the glass industry today, a furnace is using 90% of fossil fuel energy combustion, and the rest is a little bit of electricity already in our furnaces. So 90% fuel, fossils, 10% electricity. The first technology we are working on is hybrid furnaces that we expect to where we expect to increase the electricity part up to 80%. And this furnace will give us a share of 80% electricity, 20% combustion. Okay, and of course, you will tell me that if we continue to have combustion, we still need fossil fuel. But the point is that what is good, we can also use biofuels, biocombustible in order to decarbonize also this portion. And if we reduce the portion, we need less. So this is also making it more affordable, more feasible. The other technology is a full electric furnace, where in fact you go to 100% of electricity to melt the glass. You may ask me, why are we not going straight to 100% electric furnace? And in fact, there are some technical limitations with this technology. First of all, there is a limitation in terms of the type of glass that we can melt in this furnace. I won't go into the details, but to make it very simple, this technology only works for what we call flint glass, which is the white transparent glass that very often we use for water bottle typically, but doesn't work for green or amber glass. And this is why we need those two technologies to be able to convert our energy from fossil fuel to low carbon electricity plus renewable combustible. The other limitation with electric furnaces is also the capacity of those furnaces. Again, I won't go into the details, but to give you an idea, the technology today and the first pilot, which has been started beginning of this year, is more or less 50% of the capacity of existing furnaces. So this is a second challenge. Of course, we believe that this is something that we can develop. We are still for those two technology at the pilot level. So these are the first. We are investing into those new technology. And of course, they will improve as we start to operate those furnaces in the coming months and years. So going back to the second part of your question, the challenges around those development are really that we have a clear path through the electrification of the furnace, but now we need to make sure we can make it work at the right level of energy consumption, of course, of glass quality and of day-to-day operation, of course, in a safe environment for everyone. So these are the challenges, but the industry is fully focused on that. And as Fabrice showed you, there are several projects which are already in place with the technology, and we are really focused on making those developments.
Thanks very much, Romain. So Patrick, how do you view the key to realizing the opportunity of electrification of furnaces?
I think first of all, I think Romain sent already the key message. So that electrification is one of the key measures in order to decarbonize. And I think that we all agree that electrification just makes sense if it goes hand in hand with renewables. And I think here the good message is as well that renewable electricity is available, so it's feasible, and we are already executing it. And from my perspective, so we as glass industry, which is very CO2, very energy intense, I think it cannot just be our ambition to wait until the entire electricity grid has transformed. So instead, so from my perspective, so we need to be proactive. So we need to be at the forefront, so of really transforming the entire electricity. And I can tell, so we as glass industry, so we are doing that. So I think first of all, I think we need to look so on ourselves, meaning on our own sites. So for example, we need to generate renewable electricity locally where feasible. So for example, via on-site solar panels. So for example, the glass production facility in Momigny just started the operation of 15,000 square meter solar panels beginning of this year. So I think that's topic number one. But as said, so we are really very energy intense. So that on-site solution will not be sufficient. So meaning we also need to look for off-site, so for external solutions. And I think here this so-called power purchase agreement, so abbreviation to PPAs, are really so great opportunity to do so. So actually, this PPAs are really a win-win situation, which actually comprise the direct sourcing of renewable electricity, so from very specific wind and solar parks. And why do I say win-win situation? So because we as energy intense industry, so we can guarantee the project developers for wind or solar parks a fixed or let's say a reliable income, which helps them in order to finance the projects. And we, on the other hand, get really access to high value renewable electricity. So that's, let's say, pillar number 2 for renewable electricity. And beyond that, so let's say the backup solution, or to close the gap, I think this renewable electricity certificates are a proven solution. So sometimes they have some kind of a bad reputation, but nevertheless, this certificates are really a relevant and significant income source in order to enable new renewable energy projects.
Thanks,
So meaning renewable electricity, it's not one solution, so it's really a bunch of measures. And I think the key topic is that electrification together with renewables can really be a big improvement for the decarbonization of our industry.
Yeah, thank you. Sonia, so aside from switching to low carbon energy sources, as we've just discussed, are there any other emerging furnace technologies that you'd like to mention that can help reduce energy usage and optimize plants' energy efficiency?
Yes, thank you very much. Another important aspect of sustainability is energy efficiency and really maximizing how we utilize the energy that we're taking. One example of this is when we convert an air regenerative furnace to a natural gas and oxygen fired furnace. This will concentrate the waste heat in our flue gases, making it possible to recover this heat through a waste heat recovery technology. There are several different types of waste heat recovery technologies that can be utilized, and sometimes we even utilize 2 of them in series. Examples of waste heat recovery technologies can include raw material preheating, which reduces the gas consumption needed to melt the incoming materials. This can be in the form of a cullet or recycled glass preheating, batch or raw material preheating, or a combined batch and cullet preheating system. At our Veloda plant in Italy, we utilized a gas oxy furnace with 2 waste heat recovery technologies. The first being a cullet preheating system, followed by an organic Rankine cycle system that converted the remaining waste heat to electricity. This project reduced the energy consumption by 35% and the emissions by 10%. The gas oxy furnace implemented in our Vere, France facility utilized a cullet preheater to reduce CO2 by 18%. And our first batch and cullet preheating system is currently being installed in Gironcourt, France. Waste heat can also be utilized by preheating natural gas or oxygen before they get to our furnace burners, reducing the amount of incoming utilities needed. Another form is thermochemical recuperation, which then partially reforms natural gas, resulting in energy savings as well. Waste heat can also be utilized in boilers to provide heat to local area homes that are near the glass plant. The waste heat from our Reims, France furnace was used to heat 1,200 local homes, saving 2,630 tons of CO2. The waste heat recovery technology that is selected is based on the plant location as well as the energy market in the area. For example, a plant running a lot of cullet makes a lot of sense to put in a cullet preheater. If you're in an area of high expensive electricity prices, then putting in an organic Rankine cycle to produce electricity might be the best solution. If you're in a densely populated area surrounded by homes, then a district heating solution may apply. Gas oxy furnace with a waste heat recovery technology can result in up to 20% CO2 savings and a reduction of 60% of NOx emissions. Electric boosting in the glass furnace is often added or increased during a gas oxy rebuild as well. This also increases energy efficiency and decreases CO2 emissions even further when coupled with renewable electricity.
Thank you very much, Sonia. And so let's turn to the other areas that Fabrice mentioned. So there's that 80% approximately of the carbon footprint associated with glass production, but still other levers at our disposal that he mentioned, such as addressing circularity, design, transportation of glass, that can also contribute to that other 20% of decarbonisation opportunities. So I'd like to ask each of our speakers for some examples of the projects across industry today that the whole industry can seek to emulate, and also how our audience today, including, I guess, customers, public authorities, maybe brand owners, and certainly all of us as consumers of packaged goods, how can we support this transition? Roman, I'll go to you first.
Okay, so I think one of the first lever that, and I think your last point, Tim, is very spot on, that we or as citizens can really work on is the topic that Fabrice mentioned about recycling glass. So this glass has also, as a material, the property to be recyclable infinitely without any loss of property, any loss of material. So any bottle that you bring back to a recycling bins will return back in your drawers or your fridge as a bottle, and I think this is a key topic. So we have this initiative in Europe led by pave, which we call Close the Glass Loop, and this is really what is happening, as Fabrice mentioned. I think this is the first thing to do as a citizens, and to continue to, I would say, reinforce, encourage. If you are already convinced, please convince your family, your friends, your children, whatever. This is really working out. We are at 80%. Fabrice mentioned we shoot for 90, but I would like us to be at 100%. This is what we should look for. The other big opportunity is also to use another great property of glass, which is we can design glass bottles which are reusable up to 20-30 times. You probably, depending on your age and your country of origin, you probably remember that it was much more present in the past. I'm French, I can tell you in France it was the case 40 years ago. It disappeared for a lot of reasons, but glass is a perfect material for reuse. And this is something that is restarting in a lot of country now. Of course, in Germany, this has, for example, this was already the case, and it's still the case. Water and beer are massively consumed through reusable circuit and reusable bottles. But we see more and more initiative in all the countries in Europe to restart this type of activity. But what is important is that this can affect a lot of different segments, and especially a segment in which glass is not extremely present today, typically water or non-alcoholic beverage. And the impact of putting in place reuse loops in specific areas or in specific countries is having a massive impact on the CO2 linked to the packaging.
Thank you very much. Sonia, let's go to you next. Are there any examples of areas of opportunity that you see?
Yeah, lightweighting glass containers is another way that we can reduce carbon. So lightweighting glass containers allows us to manufacture more containers out of each ton of glass, resulting in lower emissions per container. Glass manufacturing, automation, and process controls continue to evolve, which gives us this ability. The glass industry is working on right-weighting glass containers by ensuring the designs for containers use the minimum amount of glass required to ensure quality and functional glass containers while retaining the brand building design cues that create value for our customers. Glass is now 30% lighter and 70% less energy intensive than it was 50 years ago. At OI, we continue to lightweight containers, but we also have a program that is pushing the boundaries of lightweighting even further. Our teams utilize advanced modeling tools during the concept and design stage to optimize the glass distribution and to understand the forces and stresses on various areas of the container, so the minimum amount of glass required can be determined to ensure we maintain quality without the loss of strength or function of the container. For advanced lightweighting, there is also additional automation and process controls utilized during the forming process to ensure glass optimization and reliable glass distribution. This process control results in uniform, reliable glass containers with no impact to quality, shape, or manufacturing performance. The program is targeting the ability to lightweight glass containers by a further 25% by 2030 as our automation and process evolution continues. In 2023, our lightweighting efforts saved over 24,400 tons of glass, nearly 48,800 megawatt hours of energy, and 13,120 tons of CO2.
Great, thank you, Sonia. And Patrick, the other two speakers have covered much of this, I think, but are there any other areas that you would like to highlight?
I think, first of all, I think so the reuse example of Roman and also the lightweighting topic of Sonia, I think really two great examples. So under this, let's call it eco-design umbrella, and maybe to set a little bit into the context. So this eco-design is, for me, one of the most interesting and also one of the most relevant sustainability actions. So mainly because of two reasons. So point one is that the earlier you set the course towards sustainability, so the higher the impact. So if you, for example, start directly in the product development, so if you reuse or if lightweight, you really can generate really a significant and huge impact. And secondly, this eco-design, so it's really a topic which we cannot do on our own and which our customers cannot do on their own. So instead, this is really a sustainability topic where cross-company collaboration and cooperation is a key success factor. And that makes it so really very interesting. And besides this refill and the lightweight topic, so for me, this topic of using recyclates, is really one very relevant one. And for me, this consists of three pillars. So Roman already mentioned that it's really crucial to collect the glass and keep it in the loop. And beyond that, it's also up to us to use the recyclates within glass packaging. So not just for the, let's say, big glass quantities, so also for other segments like cosmetic. And beyond that, I think we as glass industry also have the responsibility to design our products in a way that they can be recycled. So meaning in terms of light transmittance, so really we need to design the products in a way so that the recyclers can really recycle it and can keep it into the loop.
Thank you, Patrick. So let's move on to the enabling conditions that Fabrice mentioned in his introduction. And I'd observed that whenever we talk about any aspect of packaging sustainability, there comes a point where we realize that even if industry does absolutely everything in its power in the most optimized and aligned way possible, achieving the maximum environmental impact really relies also on external conditions and external stakeholders that the sector itself doesn't have complete control over. So I'd like to ask our speakers, how do you see this picture from the point of this topic of glass decarbonisation? What do you need from customers, regulators, and any other stakeholders to make the solutions that we've been discussing drive impacts on the larger scale that is really necessary? Let's start with Roman on this question.
Okay, so I will stick to the topic I described, but obviously electrification of furnaces for glass is only reducing CO2 if the power is decarbonated. I would say low carbon and even ideally zero carbon. So this is an obvious enabler. And there is a lot of investment. We are also contributing to that, as Patrick explains, through the type of contracts and commitment we can make on the long term, being very stable and quite big energy consumers. But we know that we won't pull that alone. And so this is one of the key enablers, obviously, because again, transforming or converting our furnaces to electrify furnaces doesn't make any sense if the electricity is not low carbon in front of it. Second point, which I think is key, if I go back to the reuse topic, from all the pilot we've been participating over the past couple of years, what we see is that we need a complete commitment of all the stakeholders to make reuse work. So it starts from, let's say, of course, packaging makers, so glass makers, our customers. The customer of our customers, very often the retailers, who in the end will be the one making the last mile logistic in both directions to bring the filled product, but also to recover the empty bottles, and also the citizen or the end consumer. But last but not least, it's also we see also that without both support and constraint, I would say, regulatory constraint from the administration, it's difficult to change behavior. So I think this is really a key element, and one of the obvious enabling element for all of that is perseverance. We need to make sure that we are all convinced that by this nothing will happen overnight, but because we know what to do and we execute the plan, it will come.
Thank you. And Sonia, would you like to build on Romain's comments?
Yes, please. Thank you. At the core of the EU's goal to achieve climate neutrality by 2050 is the need for the successful energy transition. Decarbonization poses a significant challenge, requiring transformative technological advancements across numerous industries, including glass packaging. The development, testing, and implementation of groundbreaking technologies demands considerable time and investment. A transition of this magnitude necessitates close collaboration among manufacturers, regulators, consumers, and other stakeholders. Governments can play a pivotal role in supporting the transformation through funding and by fostering the growth of low carbon energy markets. This includes ensuring the economic viability of solutions like biofuels, renewable natural gas, hydrogen, and carbon capture. Research funding will also be crucial in overcoming the remaining technical challenges in achieving full decarbonization. While renewable electricity and green fuels are critical components of this effort, more work is still needed. For example, fully electric furnaces currently limit the amount of recycled glass that can be used, leading to increased demand for raw materials. Carbon capture technology is another interesting and promising solution, but it is yet to be fully demonstrated on a glass furnace. These examples highlight the need for continued research and innovation to help us achieve 100% decarbonization. Another challenge to consider is the cost of this transformation. Large-scale transformation come with higher costs for both manufacturers and consumers. The willingness of consumers to pay a premium for sustainable products will be essential to offset the higher operating costs associated with these technologies. At OI, we continue to follow the development of several sustainability technologies to ensure we can implement economical decarbonization solutions in all energy markets around the globe. While decarbonization is a key focus, it is important to remember sustainability encompasses more than just reducing carbon emissions. A holistic approach must consider factors like recyclability, waste reduction, and health impacts. Glass excels in these areas. It is 100% recyclable, can be used infinitely. It is inert, meaning it does not interact with the contents that it holds, making it safe for food and beverages. Glass also avoids contributing to the health risks or the global waste crisis. In many respects, glass is already the most sustainable packaging material today, but once the challenge of decarbonization is met, glass will have every ingredient to remain the packaging material of choice.
Thank you, Sonia. And Patrick, I'll give you the last word on your views on the enabling conditions.
As I hope we have transferred sustainability on glass industry, so it's not just one action you realize and then you are sustainable or you have decarbonized. I think so total and contrary. So in order to be sustainable and in order to decarbonize in the glass industry, you have a big bunch of measures. You start with furnace technology, renewable electricity, and especially eco-design. And depending so in what pillar you are looking, I think you have different challenges, also different prerequisites. So when we, for example, look at the topic eco-design, So from my experience, I have the feeling that the customers are not only open for it. I think the customers really want to do it, so they are proactively requesting eco-design solutions. So I think here we already really set the scene quite good in order to realize it in the future. And I think first lighthouse projects are already showing it. So in terms of lightweight, but also in terms of let's say PCR glass solutions. And when we look at the other two topics of furnace technology and renewable electricity, I think all of this requires really huge investments. And for that, I think the glass industry is elaborating plans to realize it and is also willing to realize it. But in order to do so, it's really crucial to have on the one hand side, the required infrastructure, for example, for electricity, but on the other hand, also to have some kind of, let's say, solid or reliable boundary conditions in order to justify these big and bold investments to decarbonize.
Thank you, Patrick. So let's go back to Fabrice. So Fabrice, you've listened to the other experts' reflections on the topics that are explored in the decarbonisation report. Can you give me just a brief summation of your view of the longer term and the shorter term future for glass packaging? What are the developments that you think we can expect over the coming years?
Well, the future looks bright, Tim. Let me explain why. First of all, you know, glass containers have been with us since the start of the Bronze Age and the Egyptians, so I'm pretty confident that they will still be around us for a long time. But the way we are producing them will change dramatically, as we have heard today. We see that all companies are investing massively in new technologies. We can distinguish, I think, as you were proposing, short and long term. I will distinguish short, medium, and maybe long term, because on the short term, we have heard what the companies are doing. We need to continue to work on incremental improvements, like increasing energy efficiency and stuff like that. But you have heard that we are testing and also we are investing in breakthrough technology, and we need to master those breakthrough technology. And that will require some time, a few years maybe. So that's the short term. We have seen it has already started, but for instance, hydrogen, it's not completely done. We still need to invest to make some research to be able to use hydrogen in our furnace. On the medium term, typically 2040, let's say, this new production technology will have to be deployed at large scale across the EU. And I believe this will probably be the most challenging time. So this medium term, but not only for container glass manufacturers, but for society as a whole, and especially for authorities to put the right enabling condition in place. And I want maybe to briefly repeat what those enabling conditions are. So make sure we have enough low carbon energy sources and at an affordable price. Invest massively in grids, because we see bottlenecks today. Increase EU and national funding. That's very important, because we will be facing a higher OPEX and CAPEX. This has been also confirmed by all the experts today. And improve the local glass collection infrastructure. And these are the challenge for the authorities. And we need to do our job to have technology, techniques in place so that we can use those low carbon energy carriers. Now, on the long term, I would say the future of the container glass industry is bright. Glass is already one of the most inert material, which is very important from a food safety point of view. We have heard it is one of the most circular material on the market as well. So we have two very important characteristics for packaging materials in contact with food. But also, contrary to all other packaging materials, glass doesn't need any plastic layer in contact with the product it contains to avoid corrosion or to avoid leakage through the packaging. And that's also a very good point for glass. So once decarbonized, as Sonia was saying, once we have decarbonized our industry, and we will get there, glass will almost tick all the boxes to be regarded as the perfect packaging material for a sustainable future. Well, in a nutshell, what I had to say, Tim.
Thank you, Fabrice, and thanks to all of our speakers. And now it's the point in our Q&A where we go to some cues from the audience. And thank you to everyone who's submitted questions. We've got a few minutes as we promised. So without further ado, I'm going to put some questions that we've received through the LinkedIn chat to our speakers. First one, I will put this to you, Fabrice. How is the industry thinking about zero CO2 emissions from raw materials?
Okay, yeah, that's not an easy question indeed. So we discussed that a little bit. I think I addressed that and Romain as well. So the first obvious thing is to increase the cullet content, because that reduces your process emissions. That's the first thing to do. And we are today in Europe, we are collecting for recycling 80%. I mentioned 90% that we want to reach. Romain was saying, I want 100%. I fully agree with him. The problem is that even if we reach 100% collection and recycling, we are exporting massively outside of Europe products packed in glass. Think about champagne, perfumes, pharmaceutical products. So we export a lot of our glass, and so even if we collect everything put on the market, we will not have enough recycled glass. We will still have to use virgin raw materials, let's say. So you can think about alternative raw materials, and this is what we are thinking for the moment. And there are some ideas. You can use the oxides instead of using the carbonates. It's less frequent in nature, but this is something you can maybe think of. What we are also looking for are waste materials that we can use in our furnace, whose composition is close to virgin raw materials. There's a lot going on here. For instance, the residues of wastewater treatment plants is similar to glass composition, could be used, and this is really something that we need to develop in the future. So will we succeed in using cullet and alternative raw materials to fully decarbonize the process emission? I cannot guarantee. So there are other ideas on the table. So you can think about offsetting your emissions, installing DACs, for instance, so direct air capture to offset your emission if really needed. And then another option is carbon capture and storage. But there are some limitations in our industry because the CO2 is diluted, quite diluted. We have acidic compounds. You need to store this CO2 somewhere. It's not ideal, but you can also think about using biofuels in your plant plus carbon capture and storage, and then you will have negative emissions. So you see, there are ideas on the table, but that's premature, I think. That we are thinking about it, but we need to see how it goes.
Thank you, Fabrice. I'll put the next question to Romain. It's more of a comment for your reaction, your response, Romain. Mineral processing opal glass is also produced in electrical furnaces.
Yeah, absolutely. And you may remember that what I mentioned as a challenge on full electric glass furnace development is about the size and the capacity. Basically, the furnace we have started at Verallia earlier this year is already doubling the capacity versus what is today commonly used in opal glass manufacturing. And as I explained, we still need to double it further. So the challenge here is more about this capacity than the ability to melt glass 100% with electricity, which is, I would say, well known. But when you increase the size of the furnace, there are a lot of new challenges which are coming up, and this is what we are working on right now to ensure this technology will be able to be scalable later on.
Thank you. Okay, look, another question which I will put to Sonia. What are the main opportunities to use the momentum of safety and sustainability of glass to become the go-to sustainable solution in contexts where it is not currently often used?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's going to be important to continue to emphasize the inertness of glass packaging, especially as the health impacts of microplastics continue to come to light. So convincing, people who use other substrates and materials why glass is the preferred material of choice for those other reasons. Also continuing the lightweighting of glass and using go-to drink containers to help compete with the convenience of plastic bottles will also be important. Also, to continue working with governments to ensure we have focus on segregated glass recycling so that we continue to have kind of clean raw materials and cullet that we can utilize in our furnaces to make sure that we continue to be able to keep that circularity of glass so that it does not end up in landfill or create any issues going forward.
Thanks, Sonia. And I'll put a question to Patrick now. How can we manage scope 3 emissions that are not in our hands for achieving net zero?
I think first of all, it's important to understand that so we as energy and CO2 intense industry, so I think we really have a relevant footprint, so within scope 1 and in scope 2. So I think first of all, it should be our ambition to do our own homework, reduce so our direct emissions scope 1 as well as scope 2, and then so enhance so our view also towards our supply chain. And totally being aware that this is more challenging than scope 1 and scope 2, because it requires really a big bunch of suppliers. So really we need to look from the topics of raw material extraction up to the delivery topic, so meaning transport, so up to secondary and tertiary packaging. So again, as within the glass industry, also within supply chain, so it's not one measure. So it's really a big set of small to medium measures you have to realize at the same time in order to transform the entire supply chain.
Thank you. And I think we've got time for one final question. And I'm going to put this to Roman. Considering the 2030 targets and a lifetime of a furnace, decisions made today are already impacting this 2030 picture. Considering Roman's explanation on electrical furnace limitations on size, would you say that the most sustainable furnace technology currently available for high volume packaging, for example, in the food and NAB sector, would be hybrid? Roman, Roman, you are muted.
Apologies.
It has to happen in every webinar. Someone has to do it. It's a new law.
Exactly. Sorry for that. So first of all, I will also make a link with the previous question I answered with. Obviously, for some of the glass packaging sectors, they don't need necessarily to increase capacity of the furnaces. So electric furnace can, let's say, in their most common design today, can absolutely be used, continue to be used as they are today in perfume or in pharmaceutical glass, no question. And after, what is important is effectively to think about, okay, how do we cover all the application and all the needs in glass packaging, and effectively not only because of size but also because of the limitation in glass color. Electric furnace will not be the only solution, and this is why hybrid is also being developed, and this is most probably hybrid furnaces will be the most common type of furnace 15-20 years from now. And I think this is another big change for most of us in the industry. Today, there is the current furnace technology called end-port furnaces is extremely standardized and is more or less the same everywhere. But I'm convinced that because of a lot of constraints, we go from one single or one massive single technology to various technologies. Because, for example, as Fabrice mentioned, if in some years some factories can be connected to a competitive green hydrogen source, why would you electrify the furnaces, for example? So what is sure is there is not one single technology that will replace the current ones, and that's why we are collectively working on several technologies, several directions, because at the end of the day, and that's what Fabrice mentioned also, we do our homework to try to cover all the options on our side, and depending on what is available, we'll be able to adjust and react and find the best option. And again, we go back to the topic of enablers, which can drive us in a specific area, country, condition towards one solution or the other. So this is really the way we need to look at it. But back to furnace technology, yes, I expect that hybrid furnaces, because they will be more, I would say, more flexible in a sense that they can do all the type of glass. We can also adjust the percentage of power, etc. To some extent, will probably be the most common or the leading technology, let's say.
Thank you. In fact, well, I said that was the last question, but since Romain was very concise in his answer, I'm going to squeeze in one more. We've got maybe 2 minutes for this question, and I'll put it to Fabrice. So it's a question on coatings. And so it says, I'm led to believe that plastic coatings are still used in certain circumstances to boost barrier performance. So maybe it's not correct to state that plastic is not used or required for glass to perform in all products and situations.
Okay. Well, what I said, and you can maybe go back to what I said during you will see the recording of the video. What I said is that glass doesn't need any plastic layer in contact with the food or the drink it contains. That's a major difference compared to all other packaging material, being aluminum, steel, paper. And you are right that sometimes we apply an external coating on the bottle to avoid the scratches on the bottle, and this is a nano layer, and it's not at all to increase the barrier performance, because plastic will never beat glass in terms of barrier performance. It's simply to allow the bottles to glide more easily on the filling line. That's it.
Thank you, Fabrice.
I hope it's clear.
It was very clear to me. Thank you. So that's all the questions we have time for, unfortunately. But thank you very much for joining us in today's session. And I hope everyone listening and watching has found it as insightful as I have. I'll just try to do a very brief recap to sort of capture the key topics that we've talked about. And we've covered some essential areas for the question of decarbonisation of glass packaging. We talked about technologies available to decarbonize glass production, electrification of glass melting with fully electric or hybrid furnaces. We talked about an associated transition to renewable energy sources. There was the issue of maximizing energy efficiency through gas oxy furnaces. And we also discussed the opportunity to make further gains by facilitating reuse of glass and lightweighting in glass containers. And of course, then there's the issue of pushing recycling rates from 80% as it is today to something more like 90% in the future, which would make another really big contribution to reducing the carbon footprint. And then on the other hand, we've been discussing some of the challenges that we need to meet in order to realize these opportunities and to make these technologies and solutions economically viable. So above all, I think probably access to renewable electricity sources at scale is going to be crucial. We also talked about industry coordination to scale up reuse, better collection of used glass. And all of these imply a degree of alignment that requires industry to take collaboration to new levels. And they also rely on government support in the form of reliable clean energy grid and access to R&D grants and things like that. So I think we've got a lot of work to do together collectively, but I'm also encouraged by the clarity that we've seen today across competitors in the industry, really talking as peers and talking very constructively about the tasks that we all have before us. So it just remains for me to say that if you'd like to learn more about the projects we've discussed and lots more examples, or about how you can work together with industry, I strongly recommend taking a look at the decarbonisation reports that we've discussed many times now. It's now live on the pave website, and I think you can see on your screen a link or a URL that you can follow to find it. For now, thank you very much to all of our speakers for helping educate us today, and thank you, the audience, for joining us. Goodbye.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you.